All right. Well, we are at the top of the hour. And so we're going to give everybody a couple of minutes to start wandering into our webinar. So we're very excited because we are talking about skills today. And Chris, I know you get very fired up about this topic.
Absolutely. Not just skills, but mad skills. How are we going to world develop some mad skills?
Yes,
Yeah,
mad skills. Oh my gosh, absolutely.
I love
And
this
you
topic.
guys, as
Yeah.
you're wandering in here, I encourage you to say hello in the chat and just show up. We're watching your questions. We're watching your comments in there. And so, give us some encouragement and definitely put Chris to the challenge as we go forward because we'd love to hear your questions. Now, you guys should see a polling question. So make sure to answer your question. The polling question, of course, is how well versed are you in skills-based training? So take a look at those different options so that we understand who's on the call with us today and where you guys are coming from and what you're thinking, and so that we can best address the questions that you guys have in this skills-based economy. So Chris, while we're still waiting for everybody to come on, we were chatting before we went live, and you have some interesting plans this weekend. What's going on in your world?
Oh, well, virtual wine tasting won. So if anybody hasn't done virtual wine tasting, it's amazing how fun that is. So buy the wine, they ship it to you, and you do the virtual wine tasting. So it's pretty cool. But the big plans this weekend with virtual wine tasting in between is building my wife a really nice greenhouse. So I'm going to spend all weekend and hope I get it done and work through the 40-page manual on this wonderful large greenhouse that she wants to grow some fruit in. So
That's amazing.
and maybe I'll even be able to convince my boys to come over and help me with some of the heavy lifting. We'll see how that works out. Uh, but
Boy, Mom, we are constantly doing the same thing. We are always trying to recruit them into
oh
our
yeah,
projects. So, how big of a greenhouse is this?
it's 8 foot by 10 foot, and it stands like I think it stands about 8.5 feet tall.
Oh, okay, that is so cool.
It
Yeah,
has,
so no wonder it's 40 pages of
yep,
instructions.
yep, and it has the neatest little devices that they put on there because greenhouses can get hot, so they need to vent. And so you can either go out and manually, well, I'm going to lift the vent on the top or not. But they make these little air compressed little automatic vent things that detect the temperature. And if the temperature gets too warm, it will automatically expand and open the roof for you. And then when it gets too cold, it'll lower it down. You don't even have to touch it.
Oh, that's amazing.
Was,
That is amazing. You're going to have to post some pictures on social media
yeah, it
of
was like
the
a $70
progress.
add-on. And I'm like, are you kidding? $70 for that? That's a piece cake.
Oh my gosh, exactly.
Yeah.
So speaking of that, we just saw kind of speaking of that. That was going to be a weird transition. Sounded better in my head. But we did have some people saying hello in the chat. I saw Matt hopped on. I saw Darlene. So thank you guys so much. So as you guys continue to hop on, we're going to get started here in about 1 minute. But I do have a question based on what Chris was saying as we warm up. So opportunity for you guys to use your chat functionality. All right. Are you a plant parent? So you guys in the audience, are you somebody who is awesome at growing and harvesting and thriving plants, or are you somebody that accidentally kills a plant, even a cactus, like no matter how hard you try? I am a former plant killer. Yeah, brown thumb, Pamela. Thank you. I'm like, that's exactly what I was trying to say. I am a reformed brown thumb. So I'm trying to get to the other side, but not my natural skill.
Hey, if anybody knows how to kill cactus, I got a job for you because I got a location where there's too much cactus and every time you kill it, it grows back. So
That sounds like the kind of plant that I actually need. It looks like I've got a whole bunch of people on my side of the fence as well, with like struggling with the plants. And I'm going to say that maybe it's because everybody on this call is so focused on growing humans and human potential, that maybe that's why we struggle with plants.
Wow,
So,
that was really good. I like that. Great transition.
right. I love it. All right, Chris, are you ready to hop in? Today we are talking about skills and the skills-based economy and skills gaps, and what gift 2020 has left us with in regards to that space. How are you
Yeah,
feeling good about hopping into this topic?
absolutely. Let's go.
All
Let's
right,
go. I can
real quick.
wait.
So Jenny is our producer today. Jenny, if you will close that poll and show us where, show us where the audience is landing in regards to their skill-based training. So 44% of you guys are very familiar with the concept, but not sure where to begin. So Chris, I'm putting you on the spot. I'm holding you accountable for making sure that we get really down into the specifics about where do they start with this. 33% are shifting to skills-based training this year. We've heard a lot of that. I'm sure you're going to speak to that. And then other people have begun. But really, I mean, this poll really shows how much that this is a newer shift. It's not surprising. And there's nobody on the call that said that they've been running this for years. So why? Chris, like,
Yeah.
based on these polling questions, why are skills-based training activities becoming so popular? What is this shift about?
Yeah, so the shift is really it's been occurring for a couple of years now, and we've heard about the idea of a skills-based economy. But how do you begin to wrap your arms around what that looks like, and what does that really mean? And we get to the question of, well, why do we even need this? And the bottom line for me on why do we need to focus on skills versus an older methodology and focusing on competencies is because the granularity of additive knowledge that we need to provide for individuals. Businesses are changing dramatically in terms of what skills are required in order to be able to do the jobs that are going to drive those organizations forward. As I'm talking to other CEOs and business leaders and individuals that are very influential in this space, the one thing that is consistent is that 2020 threw jet fuel on top of the fire of we got to go to move to skills because of the changes that are going on, but it was already happening. We knew that this was something that was always already going to be working through, and we needed to have a shift because there was granularity. Yes, could we be competent in a particular topic? Absolutely. But did we have the detailed knowledge in order to be able to execute properly? That's the question. So we've seen training for years and years that began to get kind of more concise and shorter and shorter. I know in the 90s when we looked at content that we would deliver, and I was part of a company and we were building about 300 hours of new content a year. Our focus was to have content that, even though it may be a 30-minute program or an hour-long program, don't go over 7.5 minutes for a segment. Well, why 7.5 minutes for a segment? That was trained behavior because that was the length of time in a sitcom between commercials. And that's what people's attention span was. Well, it's a lot different right now. If you have something that's over 90 seconds, you probably lost half your audience. And why? Because we're all in this mode of focusing on execution at a very, very detailed level. When I go build the greenhouse this weekend, I'm not going to focus on, okay, let me go read the entire 40-page manual. I'm going to take one step at a time. If I get stuck or lost, what am I going to do? Well, I'm more than likely I'm going to go try to find the shortest YouTube video I can to tell me how to overcome a leveling problem or a connection problem or a ceiling problem or whatever it might be. And I'm looking for that just-in-time information that's going to give me data that's going to tell me how I can begin to go solve a problem. So the level of granularity that we need in this process. So me in the greenhouse, how am I going to seal the edges of the greenhouse? That's a specific skill. I need to learn how to seal the greenhouse, even though I may have a competency to build the greenhouse, I need to get down to that granular level of skill. Now, let me back up to the conversation and comment about business leaders. Business is changing. How we sell products, how we deliver products, how we consume products and services, it's all changing. And we have to adapt as organizations to that change. Business leaders now, for the first time in my 30 years of being in this industry, are coming back and saying, I'm highly dependent on learning and talent and training organizations to be able to help me execute on strategy moving forward. Because if we don't have the right skills inside the organization, then we're not going to be able to adapt to the way that people are selling, to the way they're buying, or the way they're consuming products and services. Now, learning and talent management become a critical element in the long-term business strategy, because it's the differentiation between, am I going to stay in place or am I going to exceed and move forward in the future? And I find that incredibly exciting, because now we're talking about really doing something for the people inside our businesses. Give them skills that allow them to be successful, that allow them to grow, that make them incredibly capable performers. They're going to see value in themselves, and they're going to show long-term value for the business.
And I love this because, as you're talking about just in time, I mean, it's reflective of how we use technology outside of the workplace. So it's really respectful, that training, like Darlene had mentioned in the chat, she's like, she says it's just in time without all of that intro, all the stuff that we fast forward through on YouTube or, in our training. And, as you were talking about these business leaders, I want to push you a little bit in that area. So go further, like how do you build the business case for this? What kind of impact can leaders expect, versus just, I know we need to go in this direction, but, what kind of impact will it have?
Yeah, I love the idea and the conversation around the business case, because the first thing we have to do is we have to understand what the business challenge is, or what business problem we're trying to solve. And I think I used this analogy on the podcast that we did last week, or maybe it was this week as well. But just looking at skills related to how we sell, not going on site to a client. How do you begin to do that virtually? Now I've got a business challenge, because I just took, possibly in my organization, hundreds of salespeople and said, no, you're not going to sell the way that we've been selling for the past 100 years. It's going to shift and it's going to change, and you're going to do it on video, not on a telephone, not in person, on video. That is a massive, massive shift for any organization, sales organization, to begin to go to that particular place, because now I'm on camera all the time. How I present myself, how I talk, how I engage, and how I interact, how I develop a relationship using Zoom or WebEx or whatever tool you might have. That's a really, really important thing to be able to consider. So that's your business challenge. Now, in a training organization, a learning organization, how can I impact that ability for the organization to go shift completely the way that we're selling? I can now begin to go in and train on specific skills about how to sell online, and develop that as a real capability within an individual, and do it in a granular way so it's progressive and it continues to add to itself. Now I've got something that I can connect back together to say, okay, I know the business challenge. I know what I can do from a learning, talent, or training model in order to be able to impact that. Now let's go evaluate what's the cost of the business of not being able to sell, and what's the time to competency that I can reduce to train people to actually sell online. And now we create this business case that has a value to it that we can go back to the organization. And I promise you, every single one of you can go do this around selling right now in your organizations. And there is a way to go generate opportunity and budget to be able to go make some really significant shifts and how businesses are working and operating. But
And
there's one other piece that you have to do to get to the business case, and that's a gap analysis. How do I know that we don't have the skills to be able to do that? How do I actually assess for that or test for that to find out whether we're missing that particular element? So say sales are down for certain individuals, knowing the skills that it takes in order to be able to go adjust to that becomes critical. And that's an easy process. Let's go find our salespeople that are actually thriving on video, and let's begin to assess them and interview and collect the data and define a key set of skills that we need to assess everybody else against to begin to find out what those gaps look like. Your business case isn't going to be complete unless you have the gaps. But we'll talk about the gap analysis in a lot more detail a little bit later. So let's go back to the business case again. What's my business challenge? Where do I think I can have an impact? Do a gap analysis to validate where you can have an impact. And now you can set the financial metric against that to be able to go back in and say, hey, here's my business case for why we need to execute on this level of skill-based training.
I love it. And just the problem solving at the point of friction in a right now, time frame. And then on top of that too, so clearly be able to quantify the values, actually really exciting advancement really for our industry, because I think it's time, that all the organizations are looking at how do we really maximize learning and talent. So exciting.
There's a people side to this as well, Dacia, because if we look at individuals in the organization and they're missing skills and they're struggling, I mean, that is a job dissatisfaction driver. I don't really understand how to do this, or I think I do, but I'm not succeeding. That ability to go adjust skills is not just about the business, it's really about the individual. And I think that if we take an approach and start with the individual first, the level of job satisfaction and the performance, all those things are going to roll back up into the business and are going to allow us to be incredibly successful in what we do from a learning and talent industry.
Absolutely. There's so much stress when you can't perform, or worse, when you can perform, but you don't know how to overcome the virtual environment, or there's something that's changed that you need to learn and you don't have access to it. It's awful. I mean, it's very, very frustrating. So yeah, I actually was talking to a leader the other day where he said, nobody shows up to work and just goes, you know what? Today, I'm just going to do a terrible job. Like today, I just want to hurt my department and I want to fail at the things that I put myself up. Never said no one ever as their goal for the day or the week or God forbid the quarter or the year. Just, so I mean, it's exciting, the individual and the organizational impact that this implies.
Yeah. I think I haven't thought about it that way. Yeah. Nobody walks into a company saying, I'm going to be terrible today.
Exactly. Okay. So how does skills-based training match with training in the moment of need?
Well, one of the things that happens so if we look at training in the moment of need, the idea is that we want to provide knowledge and information to achieve a critical task or even basic tasks right at the time that somebody is actually executing on that. So the example that I used about YouTube and, hey, how am I going to go seal this greenhouse, or how am I going to level the foundation? I'm going to do that just in the moment of need, just at that point in time. However, the one thing I got to back up on is we have to set a foundation first for how things are going to work and operate, right? I need to have skills to have a bubble level, and I need to understand the tools and technologies that I'm going to use again to build this greenhouse. And so working through that process and really having the foundation then makes the learning in the moment of need much, much more valuable, because now it's not learning everything in the moment of need, but learning specifically a skill that I need in that moment of need. As we move to skill-based training and that assessment and that gap analysis, having the individual and the organization be aware that we have a gap makes it a whole lot easier to then go consume that learning in the moment of need that we need to take on. And from the operation of learning and talent technology, it makes it a lot easier to deliver because now we've got the framework set up. We've provided a baseline, but now we have specific skills that are very unique to points of execution inside the organization. So now I'm going to learn in the moment of need because I've identified the one or two skills that I need to complete a task. I can go complete that skill-based training through learning in the moment of need engine, and now all of a sudden I'm ready to go and I'm ready to execute.
Love it. Perfect. Now, you're bringing up that skills gap, and I want to transition into how does our audience, how does this industry transition into there? But, you had mentioned there was additional information additional insight that you wanted. So let's go back really quick, like, what else? What should we be thinking in regards to a skills gap? And you said something important around letting the organization, the full leadership team, be able to recognize that there is a gap. Talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I'm going to start. I'll start where you just finished off there. The organization needs to understand where there are gaps in skills inside the business. If they don't know that or they don't understand that, then they're never going to be able to recognize and provide the valuable investment that we in the learning and talent organization industry need in order to be able to proceed forward. Plus, think of the value of providing information and data, even though some of it might be bad news, information and data that's valuable to business decision making. So I was having a conversation with one leader that said, I don't know the skill gaps in my organization. I suspect that I have them because we're trying to launch a new product and we can't seem to get it off the ground. And I keep going back and trying to understand why. Well, when we began to go evaluate that a little bit deeper, a little bit further, what we were finding was that there were skill gaps, and the skill gaps were the roadblocks to being able to launch the new product. And so when you begin to look at that and you say, okay, that information would have been incredibly valuable if I'd been able to say, hey, CEO, you want to launch this new product. We have these 3 or 4 skill gaps over here that if we don't fill, it's going to make it very hard to execute on delivery of this new product or this new service. Let's go fix those. Now we're fixing them ahead of time, and it makes the rollout of the new product or service that much easier. So that information is critical and valuable, probably more than anyone can actually imagine. That to say, I got a gap here. So that's a critical piece. Now let's start at the beginning and say, how do we actually go through and do a skill gap analysis? This is the biggest transition point for the industry. We have not over years gone through and mapped out detail level skills against jobs and roles. Just as an industry, we haven't done that. A lot of people mapped out competencies. Competency is a little higher level. It's not getting you to that level of granularity that I think that we're all looking for. And so let's go move through the process. We have to find a way to be able to go map that out. The starting point is not mapping skills to learning content. I want to make sure and say that. Is that part of the process? Yes, we'll get there. The very first thing we've got to do is to pick a role inside the organization. Look at that role and begin to develop a skills library and a skills matrix against a particular role. Look at the tasks of the role. Look at the skills required to complete the tasks. Go look at additional or ancillary skills that are very important in order to be able to understand the concepts and the activities that need to be taken on, and go just with the first one, develop that skills matrix. So we have a skills matrix mapped against a particular role. That's step one. You got to do that first. Now's the test. What kind of training have we actually been providing What type of learning is going on in an organization that helps actually train people or teach people about those skills? Or are they actually getting skills content in external places? Like when I got to go level and seal the greenhouse, I'm going to YouTube. I know I'm going to YouTube, and that's what I'm going to do. But maybe there's a lot of people in your organization that see and understand their own skills gap. They're looking externally for content. So being able to go in and now do a little bit of a gap analysis against, here's the 10 skills that are required in order to be able to do this position's job. And let me go look at the training and how we're educating people on that. You're going to initially find that you've got a gap in content. And when you've got a gap in the content side, you know something that you're going to have to fix long term. But we've mapped that, and I'm saying go get the content done second, because at the moment that you go start in a process, let's say we've got 100 salespeople, and we're going to go do a skill gap analysis around the ability to go sell using a tool like Zoom or WebEx, and we're going to do it online, we're on our camera. You're going to find out there's a lot of gaps. And when you share that with the business and when you share that with individuals, they're immediately going to go say, help me fill the gap. And if we don't have a plan for filling the gap, remediating against that particular problem or issue, they're going to go someplace else to find it, and our business case is going to fall apart. So step one, go find a role, go map the skills that you need against that, and understand skills against a role. Second is go look at your training content, begin to solve that problem, or at least have an answer when a business leader says, well, we don't have content for this particular skill. We have a plan for how we're going to go attack that. Then the third step in the process is really to build your skill gap assessment. There are some great tools out in the industry for being able to go do skill gap assessment. Some of them are just being launched. Some of the bigger learning and talent vendors have actually purchased tools, and they're integrating them together with their learning and talent management systems to be able to go do skill gap assessments. There's tools already out there that will do the brain work for you on this, and you don't have to actually go through that. But the question they're going to ask is, what's your role? What's your skills? What's your content? Now you're set, and we can begin that assessment process and really begin to understand, where do we have skill gaps inside the organization? Where do we have skill gaps against a role? And that information and data will help you build the plan for how you're going to execute on skill-based training. I personally believe until we have that right set of information, there is not a path that we can go down to be able to provide a solution to a problem that we don't really completely and totally understand at this moment in time. So let's go get a lot smarter by going and getting the right set of information, so we can then execute on the plan to remediate skill gaps across the entire organization.
Absolutely. And there's something earlier that you said that I just think is so profound too for the application of this is, when they find the data, when they see a gap, like for instance, just a couple of days ago, I was talking to a training leader, and this organization's known for amazing customer service. And of course, they have certain excellence metrics, right? But when they started diving into the data, they realized this excellence metric, I'm not going to give it away, but was supposed to be under 10%. And they were at 26. Very bad news, like completely against everything they believe in. But now they're doing exactly what you're talking about, where they're going, where's it at? And they're at that roles place. And now they're trying to figure out, how do we train? What's it? But they're identifying, what roles are centered at that, and not calling it bad or good, but just an area of opportunity in a time of huge transition. So, I mean, it's exciting to see it in the moment, and it'll be exciting to see them solve that problem with y'all's help. So,
yeah, I want to tie this back also to that learning or training in the moment of need as well. It's really easy to put a lot of content out, and to have content that's not focused on solving real world high-class problems. And when we talk about learning in the moment of need, we can do that and we can put a whole lot of content, but you're going to be a lot more effective if you've got the right tools and technology and the right content to be able to deliver that using information that you've already identified in the gap analysis that's going to allow us uh, just great success. And I promise, once you get that user engagement, that learner engagement in a place that, gosh, they're excited about. Hey, you know what? I know I've got tools and resources, and my learning and talent department has set up a fantastic environment for me to learn at that moment in time and develop the right set of skills. You're going to have fans for life and people that will stay engaged and come back over and over and over again. And I think there's little that's more important than that, in my mind, from the learning and talent side, is that learner engagement is critical, because without it, we're not going to be able to transform our businesses in a way that business leaders and CEOs and consumers are looking for.
Oh, and what an exciting, like heart center type of idea to think of your learners as fans. I mean, to go through that transition like that, that's actually kind of a paradigm shift. And so I think that's exciting to me to think about that.
Yeah, well, let's talk for a moment, because I want to be realistic with everybody. There's some big challenges with this. There's a lot of work to go get this done, right? If you think about, I'm going to take all the roles in my organization and I'm going to map the skills out that I need against that. And then I'm going to go map skills against content, and I'm going to go drive all that activity. There's a lot of you out there right now that are going, oh my gosh, I am so overwhelmed right now. There's no way I'm going to be able to get this done. It's too big a problem. It's a huge problem if we think that we're all going to solve it in Q1 of 2021. It's not going to happen. But we can get started in the process. We can experiment and we can plan this out by working through some of the assessments and some of the tasks that I've talked about already, which will make it much, much easier to be able to go in and build the bigger plan and then get the organization behind you, make the right investment so you can build this out over a period of time. But if we look at skills as it's something I've got to solve right now, great. Get started solving right now, but you're not going to solve it right now. It's an enormous task to get there. And I want to just be honest and transparent. We'll have to work through that together, but there's a process to be able to work through. And there's a lot of organizations, obviously Bluewater's one, but there's other organizations as well that can help you through this process. And I'm happy to answer questions anytime. It just has to be a process to be able to get there.
Yeah, absolutely. So that is basically leads into my next question. I mean, about resources. How does Bluewater help, and what other resources are out there to help people move forward?
Yeah, I think there's part of the process you have to go through. And we talked about it on the webinar last month when we were talking about fix it or ditch it. One of the things that you're going to have to evaluate through this process is, will my learning and talent technology actually support skills-based learning environment? Will it support anything that is just in time or learning in the moment of need? And you've got to go through that process, and you've got to be able to go evaluate that. And it is just part of the process. And you may find out, I don't have the technology in place to be able to do that. If you don't, then that needs to be part of your business case. You need to think about that, because the proliferation, easy for me to say, right? Proliferation of skills and skills-based training that needs to happen. The only way that we're going to be able to get it done within this decade is if we've got the right technology in place. And so if you're not aware of the technology, you want more details on the technology, then I'm happy to answer the question. But a company like Bluewater, there's a lot of other organizations that are out there that have information as consulting teams in order to be able to provide answers, responses, or even guidance into what great tools and technology uh, can be put out in place in order to be able to solve these problems. Don't start with the technology though. Let's go back to the beginning. What's the business challenge? Where can I have an impact from a learning, training, or talent management side? Do your gap analysis work. Now you have information to be able to go determine what technology is available in order to be able to drive this. I believe in a very systemic, process-driven method to be able to get here. Otherwise, it can tend to be emotional and maybe not on the right path in order to be able to go solve the problem. And I'll just tell everybody, I've been doing this for a long time. When people buy technology first without considering the business challenge or what impact you can have from a learning and talent standpoint, the technology implementation never goes well. And the utilization long term never goes well. So let's shortcut that. Let's go do the process work that we need to earlier on. We're beginning to see ATD and Burson and a variety of others begin to publish articles around skills-based learning. And most of this is really how high level, it's not how to. And some of that is because there's experimentation around how to. We're also seeing technology vendors that have invested in building out skills-based training and development. I know that organizations like Cornerstone has actually made a purchase and have implemented and are rolling out right now a AI-based and artificial intelligence-based tool to look at skills assessment, skills-based training, and really helping you with that. And so it's going to help that move that process along faster. You still have to go out and figure out what skills I need by a role in order to be able to drive that, but the technology will absolutely help you. We're seeing organizations like Docebo build out more skill-based capabilities. And then the number of learning in the moment of need companies and technologies that we see over in Europe that are now moving over in the US with companies like Expertise and Drillster and others that are doing that learning in the moment of need becomes very, very important. And then finally, we've got all the LXP vendors that are out there as well. The learning experience platform. The LXP vendors actually are a little bit made for this because they're talking about how do we go take content that's not only content that we own and provide, but how do we do it externally? And how do we create this unique experience that's all around delivering information through learning and training to individuals is another perfect place to begin to look. So you've got different categories of technologies that are out there to be able to support. So I would definitely advise that you use Bluewater or somebody like Bluewater to help you in the process. It's going to help move this along a little bit quicker. And
so what I'm hearing you say is you're saying encouraging people to get out there and access, ask the right questions, find a guide who can smooth this. And then I think I'm hearing you say progress over perfection. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Just take one step at a time and follow those steps that you've outlined.
Yeah, absolutely. Progress over perfection. You need to go out and there's all the likelihood in the world that you're going to do this the first time or the second time or the third time, and it's not going to work out the way you want to. And we learn from failures, right? How many times did Thomas Edison fail before the light bulb happened, or Alexander Graham Bell before he actually, was able to invent the telephone, or any numbers of things? How many times did Steve Jobs, not make the right decision to lead him to the right decision? Let's go figure out how we do that together as a part of the process. But there are tools and resources and technology out there to begin helping you on this journey. One thing I would be remiss to mention, so there's a lot of you that have already built out competency models, competency libraries. These things can be adapted to skill-based learning. So skills as a subset of a competency is very worthwhile, and you can begin to adapt that. However, here's my warning for you. If you spend too much time trying to adapt the skills to a competency model, it will delay you in the process and you're not going to make the progress that you need, because it's not looking with an independent view of I got a role and what are the specific skills that I need to have in place in order to be able to do that job. And sometimes competencies can be confusing. Some organizations already have skills libraries that are built out that are a subset of a competency. Great. Now go test and validate those pieces out and begin to figure out what that looks like. Final item on kind of what's already built, compliance. Compliance is an area that for years organizations have said, hey, you know what, this compliance thing, this is your have to do training. So, oh, this stuff is really fun, but you have to do the compliance training. There's an amazing amount of skill development that exists within compliance training. If you look at it and you begin to go break down your compliance training, it could be, depending on your organization and what industry you're in, it could be your place to go start your skills-based learning journey, because compliance training really is about teaching skills. Even if we're looking at OSHA skills, or we're looking at specific industry related operational skills, those are things that are teaching you, even though they're compliance training, it's skills-based training. And it's a great place for many of you to begin to start on that journey to look at, well, I got a role, I got compliance training. What are all the skills that are being taught inside the compliance training that really helps you out as a part of that process?
Yeah. It's just interesting because as I listen to you, and we're really talking about how businesses navigate all future challenges at all levels. And like you said earlier, down to the most granular application. And it occurs to me that this is the game changer. I mean, for the companies that decide to really prioritize their talent and their technology and their training and this paradigm shift, I mean, this is setting up the winners of tomorrow.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I think that the early adopters will have an advantage, that first mover advantage in the business world. I think those that delay and put this off, you're going to have a problem that I think may be a little bit different than what you consider. And I think it's going to drive turnover inside businesses. We don't provide the right skills in order to be able to do the right job and to be successful. Individuals are going to go move to other organizations that are providing that. There's too much flexibility and opportunity inside organizations to be able to go out and to provide something different. In fact, just a quick story. So we've got a client that we helped a number of years ago, and when we looked at what's your business challenge, they were having excessively high turnover of first-year employees. And when we went in and helped do the analysis around that, and you asked why, and the answer was, I was seeing all my friends that came out of college, and they're over in another company, and they're developed, they've got a career path, they're getting trained on specific things it takes to do my job. We're not doing any of that over here. And so even though this is a great job, I'm going to go to a place that's going to set me up for my long-term future. And so when we look at that across the board, that there's a competitive element to that as well, that those specific skills that are being developed provide an opportunity, not for somebody to go leave and get another job, but to become more invested in your organization. But the lack of skills-based training in those particular gaps that begin to build provide an opportunity for somebody to make a change, and all of a sudden, boom, I'm rolling out of this company, but I'm going over to the group that's actually going to train me, provide me the right path for my career in the future, and allow me to develop in a way that is going to provide personal satisfaction.
How heartbreaking to have spent all of that time attracting that talent, recruiting them, hiring them, convincing, developing them, setting them up, and you got it right. They are talented and you lose them anyways.
Yeah.
Oh God, it's so frustrating. Yeah.
Yeah. So how do we fix that? Let's go in and let's begin to find a way to impact the organization and the business, because the organization, the business has changed so much over not just the 2020 COVID time, but business has changed so much over the past 2 to 3 years. And that evolution and the speed of change will happen so quickly that I promise you, when we begin to look at 2022 and 23 and 2025, that skill-based training will be so important, because jobs are going to change in a calendar year. They may change from quarter to quarter because new things are happening. We need to be more adaptable. That long-term consistency is not there, as the world around us is changing, the needs are changing, and we've got to figure out a way to address that. I'll tell you I'll tell you, COVID, one of my favorite changes, curbside, right? I can go to a restaurant. I need to take out. I don't have to get out of my car. I can just go to.
Yes.
Now, you had to develop a new process, a new mechanism in order to be able to go do curbside pickup, right? And it doesn't matter who you are. I've even gone with my wife wanted to do curbside pickup at, I don't remember, I think it was Nordstrom. So order online, you go through, you get that filled, you drive into the spot, you call the phone number, they come, they bring. A process had to be developed for handling that end to end, right? All the way from the order all the way to the delivery of dropping that off inside your car. There's skills that are associated with that change into curbside pickup. Because I can tell you this, there's some that did a great job of teaching the skills about how you handle that and how you manage the process. And there's others that just threw it together, and it's actually a negative to their business versus a positive. Well, we will continue to see changes like that in the evolution in buying habits, no matter what the product or the service is that you're building, that you're selling, that you're delivering, it's all changing. So what might seem like a minor change into curbside pickup for takeout now is something that sticks forever. Did we train on the right skills, or did we assume that change was just minor, that'll go away in a while and let's just kind of go through it together? But I think those new processes, every process is going to have a set of skills, and those skills are going to train and provide new behaviors for the organization. They're going to be beneficial for the individual and for the business.
100%. And every time there's something like that, people's expectations change, and they bring those expectations to work, to their leadership style, to their purchasing behavior. I mean, it becomes this 360 degree where, you can't just throw something together, because now there's levels of expectation that are table stakes. Like, we just expect your brand and your brand promise to shine through all of your employees and all of the changes, because that's, as humans, how we perceive the world, and we bring those alongside of us. So absolutely.
Yeah, it's interesting to see. And one of the things that we hear from a number of people, when we go in and work on user experience and help to perfect the user workflow and journey, what's the first thing that almost inevitably everybody says to us? I want this to be as easy to use as Amazon. Okay, well, that is exactly what you said. Now I'm going to bring a consumer or my personal desires in, that it's got to be as easy as Amazon inside the business. So it's not just, hey, this is a corporate tool, but it's a corporate tool that has to be as easy as Amazon.
Yeah.
I'm going to bring those expectations from the outside inside. Then how much skill training do we need to do? How do we need to change the entire way we think about interaction and human interaction? And even in the virtual world and environment that we're in, how much has that changed? And what do we need to do to adapt to those changes? It's a change in a process against a role that has specific skills. Now let's go deliver those. Deliver those as foundational training or deliver those as just-in-time training. Either way, you've got to go make that shift and you've got to make the change.
Exactly. All right, my friend, any final thoughts as we wrap up? Because I want to share an additional resource before we let everybody go into their afternoon, but any final thoughts from you?
Well, as you can tell, I get pretty excited about this topic, and I hope you will as well. This is a shift, and it's not just an idea that's not going to stick around. The skills-based economy is here to stay, and you really need to think about how you move and adapt and shift now. And that process may take a long period of time, and it may evolve, but go ahead and start the movement. Process and progress over perfection is absolutely the word of the day around this, because it is going to take you a while to get through that. I'm happy to talk to anybody at any point in time. Just reach out to me. You can find all my information on the Bluewater website, but would love to just have a chat and to talk in more detail about things we're seeing and where we have successes. And they see, I would imagine that we're going to have more podcasts and more webinars around the idea of skills-based economy, skills-based learning, just-in-time learning in the very, very near future.
Agreed. Hey, Chris, I just looked at the time and we actually have one final question that rolled in. Do you mind?
Oh, no, let's do it. I love
Okay.
it.
So Darlene posted, we have a skills section in our LMS, and I'm not sure how to begin using this feature. Should we tie them to the competency? How do we break down our training to identify the skills in the course? So we talked a little bit about this. Anything you want to add to that?
Gosh, Darlene, I wish I knew what technology we're on, and then I would get some smarter people on my team that really know that technology to begin to solve that. So you know what? I will, Darlene, if Jenny, if you can private message Darlene, let's go get information on the technology and begin to talk about that. But if you've got skills and competencies, and so I'm going to talk generically about an LMS, if you've got skills and competencies inside your LMS, and you begin to look at those skills, depending on the system, you may have a connected issue and you need to have a competency in order to be able to have a skill set. And if that's the case, then just develop a generalized competency. Then I would break it down and build the individual skills like we talked about before. That skill mapping against the content is where it'll get tricky, and it's different from vendor to vendor to vendor. Some do a really good job at that. Some it's a little bit more complicated because at the end of the day, why do we really want to do that? It's the information and the data from the reporting that we want to be able to get out. So I want to make sure that we're accurate on how to go set that up. But depending on what technology you're in, I know that we have a solution. So we'll definitely make sure that we connect with you and just have an offline conversation. I bet we can help you out.
Absolutely. And Valerie just was asking if this recording will be published. Absolutely. You guys will have it. This is on YouTube, and it is also, of course, going to be sent to you so you can go back to this. And Chris is telling the truth, as is the whole Bluewater team. You can come alongside, they can come alongside you, or vice versa, on specific things around skills base, around data, on skills mapping, but also, as he mentioned earlier, on building the business case. So make sure all of those questions, because this is the future of your business and the future of the individuals in your business. But specifically, one final resource is that if you like these kind of topics that we're talking about, and we strive really hard to be practical as well as visionary, we have a podcast where we go much, much deeper. So on your phone, on any of your mobile devices, find your favorite podcast provider, and you are going to see we're looking at, and just Google or enter it in, the human side of learning and talent technology. And so we have some fun, but it really is the real side of being in the trenches alongside of this technology and alongside of the changes that are happening. So thank you, everyone, so much for joining us. And Chris, as always, thank you so much for freely sharing, your point of view and the things that you're learning as we move along.
Wonderful. Well, it's what I love to do. So see, it's always great to be here with you. So thank you so much. Thanks everybody for joining, and we'll see you around the skills block.
That's right. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye. Thank you.